Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Celebrate with L.A. Williams. My name is L.A., and I am so honored and grateful to bring to you this very special episode. Today, we are celebrating Miss Pearl Cleage. Miss Pearl Cleage. Oh my God. Now, Miss Pearl, before I get into a deeper introduction of you, I want to talk a few seconds about what Celebrate is and what it means to me, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So this series is a manifestation of a moment I had as a young theater student at Alabama State University. It was my very first semester in college, my first time seeing a show in the theater. I knew nothing about acting, theater, any of it. And I had gone over to the theater to see a production of a play called Phaedra by Jean Racine, directed by Dr. Tommy Stewart. And it was absolutely a life-changing moment. It was one of those moments where we say I was bitten by the bug, the whole thing. But what was also extraordinary about that show and that experience was that I kept feeling while watching the show 4 times, because I saw it 4 times back to back. I kept going to every performance. I kept feeling this overwhelming desire to find the people responsible for making that show and say thank you to them. I needed to say thank you. I needed to let them know how the work that they did on that stage and the work they put into that project changed my life. It shifted something in me. And of course, at the time, at that moment, I didn't know that I would go on to become a theater director, but that was truly the beginning of the rest of my life. And I just needed to say thank you to them. And that actually is the genesis of Celebrate, right? It's my opportunity, my way of saying thank you to the folks who have really uplifted me, inspired me, encouraged me to like have this beautiful life that I have, and just done all the things. And that is what Celebrate is. 10 years ago in 2012, I decided to turn it into an interview series where I sit down with some of those people and say thank you to them. And also just kind of listen to their journey and hear like what were some of the formative moments in their life, right? Like what were some of those experiences that made them go, yes, whoop, 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 and all the things, and to ask them to celebrate those moments with me. And here we are in 2022. We are pulling through this pandemic. We are surviving. We're thriving. We are doing it. And I decided last fall that I was going to go and see as many shows as possible here in New York, outside of New York. I wanted to stand up and support people who I consider to be heroes. Artists, educators, people working in the grocery store, people working at the coffee shops, people who are on the front lines of this pandemic, taking care of us, taking care of us, right? And not only just inspiring and uplifting us, but actually taking care of us. And I said, I got to bring Celebrate back this season. I have to bring it back. And I think it's here to stay. And that leads me to the great Miss Pearl Cleage. I'm so excited, Miss Pearl. I'm so excited. So I just want to say a couple lines to the audience about why Miss Pearl is so special and why I wanted to bring you on to say thank you, sister. Thank you for existing. My first experience, Miss Pearl, and I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this like person to person.
I love it. Tell me everything.
I tell you everything. It was actually when I was an intern at True Colors Theater Company in Atlanta, Georgia. I was working for Kenny and his folks down there in Atlanta. And, you know, I was assistant directing all the shows. And the next show coming up that season was going to be Blues for an Alabama Sky, written by Pearl Cleage. And I said, okay, let me get prepared. I got to do all the study guides. I got to do all the stuff to get right for the show, because that was my job. But I was also assisting. And that was the first time, y'all, and the last time, okay, that I auditioned to be in a show. It was the first time outside of college or grad school that I auditioned to be a professional actor in a show, because I was so unbelievably moved by that play. And I didn't know it then, but I think I'm learning now that it was the character Guy that I saw my whole self in. And I auditioned, and the great, brilliant Andrea Fry, the director of that production, she was so kind, Miss Pearl. I'll never forget this. David Blackwell, who was the production stage manager, called me back, and I was like, oh my God, I got a call back. I'm gonna be in Blues, you know, the whole nine. And I go back to my little callback at Southwest Art Center, and it's Andrea and David in the room. And I walk in, and Miss Andrea says, she's looking at my resume, and she said, it looks like you've directed more shows than I have, because I had some grad school directing credits. And I said, huh? I'm ready to audition, and I got I got everything on, ready to go. And she said, I was wondering if you would be my assistant director on the show. And I thought, absolutely, absolutely. And then the rest was history. I was in the room with you, with Andrea, with Jasmine, that cast, working on that play. And so I got to experience it from a directing standpoint. And let me just say this really quickly. Andrea Fry directed that play. She directed
Yes,
that
she did.
play.
Yes,
She
she
directed
did.
that play. Okay. Within an inch of everybody's life, she directed that play. Which helped me really understand it in the way that I was able to. And then after that, I moved to New York and I said, okay, all right, I got to find a way to bring this play to New York. So, Miss Pearl, listen, this is my thank you. This is my official thank you to you for being you, for existing, and for writing Blues for an Alabama Sky, and for giving us and the world Guy and Angel and Leland and Delia and Sam.
Thank
Sister.
you so much for that. It's wonderful because I love that character of Guy. He's so he's such a free person. And the fact that you saw something that you could hold on to in Guy means everything to me because he is really, we tend to think of that as Angel's play. And I even thought of it as Angel's play because I tend to write plays with Black women at the center. And then the first time I saw it with an audience, they absolutely adored Guy. I mean, they screamed during the curtain call when Guy came out. And I said to myself, oh my God, this is really Guy's play. He's the one whose journey we are really going on. And he's the one who states a dream at the beginning and takes us all the way through. And then at the end, he gets to go to Paris. And
Absolutely.
I had a very close friend of mine who has passed away now, who said to me, I really want to thank you because the gay guy didn't have to die at the end.
Yeah.
And we always have that as Black people and gay people have it. Anytime there's like someone who's identified as a minority, they're gonna die.
They're gonna die.
And it's like, not in my play. That's not
Absolutely
what happens.
not in Blues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you
the fact that you started with that, and then you were the person who actually finally brought that play into New York so that it could have a moment at Keen Company and just the scope of that of just your journey intersecting with mine is really, I'm so happy to be here as a part of what you're doing because I feel that strongly too that need to thank people who interact with you in a way that helps you feel stronger. And you did that for me. Your belief in that play actually was very important to me because living in Atlanta, people in New York sometimes act like we're in another planet altogether.
A whole nother planet. Exactly. Yes.
And it's just your absolute belief that that play could have a life and could find an audience in New York was just so wonderful for me. And it did.
It did.
It did that. So it's like
we did it.
Just thank each other all day.
Exactly. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Miss Pearl. It's so true. I'm just bringing Blues to New York is and always will be one of the greatest honors of my life. It really will always be that. So what we do at Celebrate is I like to do this thing where I start off by celebrating the day you were born. And the idea here is to just have you take us back as far as you can. It can literally be your birth story, or it could be your earliest memory, or just, young Pearl growing up, and just kind of talk to us about, your early life and just kind of where you come from.
Wow, that's a great question. I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts. My father was a minister, and he had a church in Springfield, Massachusetts. So my mother and father had moved there. My older sister, was also born there. But my father was pretty radical for Springfield. So by the time I was born, they were kind of thinking it might be good to come back to Detroit. But my very earliest memory is of Springfield because there was a lot of snow. I was born in December, so it's not I couldn't have remembered it from that first December, but the next December, I remember clearly as a little kid, like standing against the front door, and there was a glass pane and looking out, and there was snow all the way from our front porch all the way down to the street, and it covered the cars. And I remember as like a little baby kid thinking, whoa, this is not right. Where's the front steps? What's going on?
Yeah.
That's my really only memory of Springfield, because we came back to Detroit when I was 2, and Detroit is really where I grew up and evolved into, a person who wanted to write. And that's been something that's been with me always my second earliest memory after that snow is standing up in a crib. So I must have been, maybe two, standing up in a crib, leaning over the side to tell a story to my sister who was 4. And she
Wow.
actually stopped to listen to my story. And I
Wow.
remember just as clear as a bell thinking
Mm.
to myself, I am killing this. I made a 4-year-old stop and listen to me because I'm only 2. What could I have been talking about?
What could you have been
But,
talking about?
my sister doesn't remember the essence
Mm.
of the story, but
Mm.
it was a moment for me when I realized what I wanted to do was
Mm.
tell stories. And then my
Mm.
sister subsequently went to first grade, learned how to read, came home and was reading. And
Mm.
I was indignant because I knew adults could read. It hadn't occurred to me yet that little kids like us could read. So I
Yeah.
tormented my sister until she taught me how to read. And we have such we both share this memory of we would wait. So my mother put us in the bed. We had twin beds. We were in one room together. And
Mm.
we would get up and go over to a table that we had by the window. There was a street light. And she
Mm.
would teach me how to read by the street light.
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
why didn't we just do it during the day? What was the drama of waiting and sneaking? It's not like my mother would have said, no, you don't
No
read.
reading.
Don't read. No reading. Not, I mean, please, it was a reading house. And we asked her because we thought we were being so slick. And we asked
Mm.
her years later, did you know that we used to do that? And she said, of course. I'm in the house, it's all quiet, and I hear these little footsteps going, so I figured they weren't doing anything. So everything was
Mm.
fine. But that's how
Mm.
my sister taught me how to read. And once she did
Wow.
that, I started keeping notebooks, little notebooks. I wrote stories all the time in these little
Mm.
notebooks you get from the Five and Dime. My
Mm.
grandfather would get them for me in little pencils. And I would write my stories. And I
Mm.
I would give a lot to be able to see what I was thinking at age 4,
Mm.
5,
Mm.
enough that I would actually take the time to write it down. But I think that's because I came here as a writer. That was,
Mm.
you come with the gifts I think that you
Yes.
have, and you can
Yes.
recognize and develop them, or you can, have the terrible circumstance of not having a chance to do that. But I think you
Mm.
you come here with who you are.
You come here with who you are. It's
Mhm.
so true, Miss Pearl. Um, I love, and with that, I love that you at 2 years old knew you were a storyteller and you knew that you were an effective storyteller and that you had your sister. I just love that so much. It's beautiful, and that y'all were sneaking, which is it just make like you said the drama of it all. It's also just
Yeah,
juicy.
right. There was no reason, but it made it such a great memory. We both treasured that memory. It's like,
Absolutely.
okay, make it a play.
I love that. Now, were you and your sister the only two, or did you have more
Yeah,
siblings? Or, okay,
just
so
the
it was
two of
just you.
us, just the two of us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. You have an older sister. And what was life like in Detroit outside of the house? Like, what was happening in the world at that time? Like, what are some of your memories of just like Detroit or family or external sort of experiences
Well,
outside the
we got
house?
we got to Detroit. My parents grew up in Detroit, and we got back to Detroit when I was 2. It was 1950.
Mm,
And the factories were in full swing.
mm,
There was no unemployment.
mm,
There were lots of intact families on our street.
mm,
It was a
mm,
mixed in terms of class, like
mm,
working people, factory people, also high school teachers, doctors.
mm,
Everybody
mm,
was right there together.
mm, mm,
So that Detroit was in a really good moment, a very
mm,
strong Black middle class
mm,
because of all those factories. My
mm,
family got to Detroit initially in my grandparents' generation
mm,
because my grandfather came from Alabama to work at Ford's factory.
mm,
So
mm,
that our family is actually, the Great Migration. We came there from
mhm,
Alabama to work. But when I
mhm,
got there and growing up there, it was great. It was
mhm,
just almost an idyllic kind of urban existence.
mhm,
There were all kinds of Black folks. We were,
mhm,
allowed to ride our bikes around the neighborhood. My mother never made us feel like it was dangerous
mm,
to be outside playing, which for many children in Detroit now it's dangerous to
mhm,
be outside. So it was wonderful. Plus the fact that I had lots and lots of family.
mm,
And they all tended to live on the west side of Detroit.
mm.
If you know people from Detroit, we always differentiate west side, east side. Why? I do not know. But I grew up on the west side, so
On
I'm
the
a
west
west
side.
side. I'm a west side person. But I had
Wow.
cousins. One set of grandparents was on the west side. One set of grandparents was on the east side. Had lots of cousins on both sides of the family. And my father's family was very active politically. My father's church was a very active hub for political activity, for registering people to vote, for talking to people about what their rights were, all of those kinds of things. They started a political party, the Freedom Now Party. So my father ran for governor. My uncles all ran for something. My mother, they all, they ran for something. They had a newspaper called the Illustrated News, which was a weekly paper that came out that was a lot of analysis, a lot of talking stuff. My family's big stuff talkers. So they're just like, they would always be telling some white politician about his sorry self. So there were there was lots of energy for change, lots of now if it needs to be changed, we are the ones who are going to change it. And I remember as a kid going to somebody's house, a friend from school, and they didn't have any books in their house. And I was like, I was a little kid, but I was amazed that there were no books in the house. So when we went home, I said to my mom, they don't have any books in their house, but they had a lot of stuff. They had a lot of clothes. They had a big Cadillac. They had a lot of stuff, but no books. And my mother said, well, that's because what they choose to spend their money on is not what we choose to spend our money on. But because we have all these books, that means that you have to read enough to make up for their family because they're not reading. And I said, wow, even as a kid, I thought that was really a profound thing that she said to me.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's not going to be reading, but since you have that ability, you have that in your house. I mean, we're in my office and look at it, it's full of books.
Full of books.
But the fact that really struck me, and my mom had a response to that, which was, okay, that means you got to work harder. You have to read more so that you can do what I used to watch my father do, which was to take very complicated ideas. And I remember watching him reading Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth. And he would talk to me about these things, like I understood what he was talking about. And I adored my father. So I'd be there nodding like, I understand. And I'm thinking, I'm 10 years old. I don't know what this is about. But I would watch him read all these very complex history and sociology and politics. And then on Sunday morning, he was able to translate all of that into a very accessible lesson for people, a story for people, so that regular working people who were working hard in those factories that paid them enough to buy houses and send their kids to college, but demanded really, really hard work. That my father could explain very complicated theories about how people can move around in the world to regular working folks who didn't have time to read Frantz Fanon. And I still think of my own work that way, that I never want to be a playwright or a writer where people have to get a dictionary and where regular working folk look at it and say, that is not for me. I don't even know what this is about. I want people to be able to come to the theater. If they know about the Harlem Renaissance, they'll see some stuff in Blues for an Alabama Sky that someone who doesn't know about the Renaissance might not see. But anybody can follow that story. So that I'm always very clear about wanting everybody to find a way in. I'm not interested in writing for only people who have had a chance to take the African American history class.
Right.
It's like, we are the African American history class.
Come on now. Let's
write about us.
Let's write up.
You don't have to prove how much you know in it. Yeah. So
Miss Pearl, that's it. We are the African American history.
Yeah, we're it.
So we have to write about us.
Yep, we do. And we have to also write to us.
Yeah.
One of the things that really is challenging, I think, that sometimes makes me sad about younger playwrights is that they're busy fussing at white folks. And I went through all that with the Black Arts Movement, where there'd be a theater full of Black people and on the stage would be so busy fussing at white folks that I always wanted to say, there's no white people around here for miles. It's just us. What would you say to us? Stop fussing at white people. And I think sometimes the New York theater community, because Broadway is such a thing that people want that so badly, and those audiences are still predominantly white people with money to be able to afford to do that. So that if you're structuring your work as a way to talk to those white people and do what I was talking about, my family was so good at, which was tell them all about their sorry selves. It's like, that's fine, but that's soul crushing. After a while, because just fussing at people about what they're doing to hurt you is like a hard way to go. So sometimes I want to celebrate what we do in spite of that.
Yeah.
And I tell white people that sometimes I say, wait, you're acting like all we ever talk about is you. And trust me, we don't. We talk about our mama,
That's
we
right.
talk
That's
about
right.
love, we talk about what
Everything.
we're going to eat
Yeah.
for dinner, we talk
Yes.
about our health, we talk about how much soul
Outfits.
food can you eat and not kill
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
All of that, we're not always angry and fussing. We fall in love. We have beautiful stories about people who love each other. And I just am sometimes conscious of when the audience and the presenter and the producer, when all of those entities are still controlled by people who are not us, the kinds of work that we do to get their attention might be very different than the work we would do if we were just trying to get each other's attention. Because the assumptions are different. We know what we know, and we know they don't know. So we're explaining. We got to explain as opposed to saying they'll catch up.
They'll catch
They
up.
can catch
They'll
up the
catch up.
same
They'll
way,
figure it
the
out.
same way you did when you went to the theater, the same way
Absolutely.
people do when they go to see a play written by a Chinese person or a Cherokee person. Catch up. And if you don't know, you leave the theater and say, damn, I am really dumb about that. I need to do some work. I need
some
to
at-home
out
work. Yeah,
what that play
exactly.
was about.
Yeah.
What were they talking about? What does that mean? What is foot binding? What is that? What does that mean? But in order to do it, you have to be prepared to open to other cultural experiences than your own. And to realize that all cultures are valuable. Even when we talk about the things we often talk about now in the theater, like, the BIPOC things, and we're going to do this and that. And the calling, describing people as BIPOC, as opposed to, don't say indigenous people, say my tribe. Don't say Black people. Are they Dominican Black people? Are they Nigerian Black people? Are they Dothan, Alabama Black people? Because they're all Black, but they couldn't be more different. So
couldn't be. Yeah.
It's like, of course, it takes more time to say, the specific, but that's the point. The fact that we're always trying to say it fast. It's like, don't say it fast. Say it right.
Say it right.
Call me by my name.
Call me by my name. Miss Pearl, I'll never forget the imagery of your father working to put together these speeches and things for the services, and you watching him do that. And as a result, your work being accessible and clear, because that's exactly what my experience is. And whenever I'm reading your plays, working on your plays, seeing your plays, I'm like, yeah, I remember the first time I heard your words, period. I remember it being, the episode of Oprah when you were doing the We Speak Your Names. And I thought, this writing is so clear and easy and accessible. And this voice is just so extremely clear. So I just love the fact that you've connected that for me today in terms of how and why you strive to make that possible in your work. So when you, high school, adolescence, did you continue to be did you write plays? Did you go to school for the performing arts? Did you work in the community theater?
I always wrote ever since that day in the crib when I got my first audience. I wrote. I wrote poems. I remember being in the 4th grade and I wrote a poem about a snake waking up in the jungle. Why I was thinking about this in Detroit, I do not know. But my teacher thought it was a great poem. So she sent me to read it to the principal. But I had to sit outside of the principal's office to wait for the principal to come out and get me. And my friends, I was such a good girl. I never got in trouble. And my friends who would pass by the door and see me outside, they were like, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. What did you do to have to go to the principal's office? I said, no, I'm here because I wrote something. So that I had the great advantage, I think, of being in an environment where my parents rewarded me for writing and for thinking of myself as a storyteller. And I was in the Detroit public schools. I never went to private school. And I had teachers who recognized that I was trying to write. So they would, reward me for writing a great poem. I wrote an adaptation of Chicken Little, and they let us take that. I think that was 3rd grade. They let us take our little production around, up and down the hall to the 4th graders and let them look at the play. And it's all, it's all elementary school silly things when you think about it as an adult. But for me as a young person, actually thinking of myself as a writer, anytime someone would say to me, that's really good, it made a big difference to me. It made me feel like maybe I did have a life as a writer that I could pursue. So I continued to do it. Junior high school, I was the editor of the school paper. I worked on the yearbook. I wrote columns and I always was writing plays and
Mm.
poetry. But
I love
I
that.
never wanted to do anything other than that.
Mm.
I always tell people I only ever wanted two things. I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be madly in love with someone who was madly in love with me.
Yeah.
So it's like I wanted to make sure that both of those things happened, and so far so good. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
good. But high school was great. High school more political activity because
Mm-hmm.
I was older then. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to picket lines and demonstrations, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to, have better schools and all of
Mm-hmm.
those things because my dad was very much
Mm-hmm.
involved in all that. And my mother too, but my dad mostly in terms of a public face of
Mm-hmm.
what was going on. So I was very much involved in all of that at the same time that I was having a regular American high school experience. It was an
Mm-hmm.
all black school, big
Mm-hmm.
school,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a couple thousand kids, all
Mm.
black,
Wow. Oh,
two
wow.
white people,
Mm.
one white
Wow.
girl and one white boy. We
Mm.
were always known as the white girl and the white boy. We were not aggressive in terms of how we did these things.
Yeah.
But it was just
Mm.
I was dancing at that time. I did a lot of
Mm.
modern dance. So I
Mm.
was in the dance club in the theater. I did
Mm.
several plays. I did some acting then, but
Mm.
I never felt comfortable acting. And
Mm.
my high school, I just said, was all black. We had a black
Mhm.
drama teacher,
Mhm.
and I got cast my first time in a play in high school. I got cast in Auntie Mame, and
Mm.
I was the Southern Belle. So I
Mm.
had to talk to Auntie Mame with this fake Southern accent and everything. And the experience was fun, but the thing itself was mortifying. And my family, radical black nationalists, they were like, what the hell are you doing? What is this? How do you take the play? Next play she wanted to do, I got one of the leads. That was Arsenic and Old Lace. Now,
Mm.
why she was doing this in an all black school in
Mm.
Detroit in the 1960s is beyond me. But first day
Mm.
of rehearsal, I went out, we went through the rehearsal, and I thought to myself, this is ridiculous for me
Mm.
as a 16-year-old
Mm.
black girl
Mm.
in
Mm.
Detroit, all
Mm.
involved in black consciousness and all
Mm.
of that. And I'm doing Arsenic and Old Lace. And I
Mm.
told her I just couldn't do it. So I dropped
Mm.
out. And that was
Mm.
the last acting I ever did. After that,
Mm.
I felt like, okay, if I'm going to be on the stage saying it, I want it to be something that I've written, which is why I did a lot of performance with my husband. We did 10 years of performance work where I would write it and then we would, put it together on the
Put it
stage
together and do
and
it.
do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that. Thank God for Arsenic and Olace and the fact that you dropped
I
out and said,
know,
I'm a
right?
write. I'm so glad that you were like, okay, I'm a write the plays. Thank God that you had that moment. So talk to me about what happened after high school. Did you go to college? Where did you go to college? Did you study the arts or theater? Or did you study something else? Like what happened after? Did you leave
Um,
Detroit?
I did leave Detroit. My intention was to go to New York so I could be a playwright. So
Mm,
I applied to Barnard. I was thinking about going
mm,
to going to Barnard, and I also was interested in Bennington, which is in Vermont, because
mm,
I was interested in dance. They had a great
mm,
dance program.
mm,
I'm, thinking about, okay, I'll go to New York and be a playwright, or I'll go to Bennington and be Martha Graham, and it'll be great, and all that. And then I got a catalog from Howard because I had scored really well on a national test. So I got a catalog in the mail from Howard University, and they
mm.
said, congratulations, you scored so well on this achievement test, and we would like to give you a full scholarship to
Oh,
California,
wow.
room, board,
Whoa.
everything.
Whoa.
I hadn't been thinking about Howard at all. And I
Mm,
looked at the catalog, and on the front of the catalog, there were these young Black people, college students, and they had like their sweaters tied around their neck, very Ivy League. And they were standing in front of the library at Howard. And I thought, this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't want to
mhm.
go to Bennington, Vermont. There's no Black people in Bennington,
Exactly.
Vermont. I'm not
Exactly.
going there. And I'm
Yeah.
probably not ready for New York. I'm a little girl
Mm,
who was very
mm,
sheltered in Detroit.
mhm,
I might
mhm,
not be ready for that.
mm,
And this is a place that had a BFA program. They had a
mm,
Bachelor of Fine Arts at Howard,
mm,
and I could go immediately into the
mm,
playwriting program. I didn't have to
mhm,
wait and take biology and math and all of that.
mhm,
I instantly went
mm,
into the playwriting
mm.
program. So I accepted the scholarship and caught the train. I was afraid to fly. I still don't like to fly. Caught the train and went to Howard, and it was wonderful. I had
Wow.
work in playwrights every semester. My first playwriting teacher was Owen Dodson, who was
Mm,
in the Harlem Renaissance, who
mm,
had written plays and known everybody. Then I had Ted Shine, also a wonderful working playwright. Then I had Paul Carter Harrison, was a
Mm,
wonderful playwright. So I
mm,
was very much involved with Black people who were working in the Black theater universe, who
mhm,
were doing plays, who knew that if we actually were prepared to do this work, there was a community
mhm,
of theaters that was
mhm,
waiting for us, that
mhm,
needed what we were doing. And
mhm,
that I don't think would have happened if I had gone to a big white school
mhm.
or a little white school,
Or a little white school,
because
yeah.
what made the difference was the people that were teaching me were already involved in the
Mm,
universe of people who could present that work I was trying to do,
mm.
so they
Well
could tell
said.
you. And
Mhm,
at that point, there was a thriving network of
mhm,
maybe 25, 30 producing Black theaters in the
mm,
country. So
mm,
that, they were little tiny community theaters. They
mhm,
were, the Negro Ensemble Company in New
mhm,
York,
mhm,
but they were accessible to me
mm,
as a
mm,
young Black playwright. So when
mm,
I'd finished at Howard, I finished at Spelman. I left Howard after 3 years, moved to Atlanta,
mhm,
and got married. So that I
mhm,
finished at Spelman,
mm,
where I also had working playwrights in Carlton
mhm,
and Barbara Millette,
mm,
who were
mm,
my teachers at Spelman.
mm,
As soon as I graduated, I started sending plays around to these Black
mm,
theater companies, to all of them, and saying,
mm,
I'm a playwright. Here's a play. What do you think? And, some of them were like, I don't know. But a lot of them would say things to me like, we love the play, but we don't have any money. So,
mm,
we can't really do anything. And I would write them
mm,
back and say, but you work somewhere, right? And they would say,
mm,
yeah. And I said, but the lights are on. You do have money
mhm,
enough to pay a light bill. You
mm,
pay actors, or you have,
mm,
some money. How
mm,
about you send me $10 and
mm,
5 copies of the program, so that I
mm,
can begin to build a file that says I'm a working playwright. And they were
mm,
amazed at that. They'd be like,
mm,
$10? We can come up with $10. Like, yes, you
mm,
can. And it's important for you as the
mm,
theater to pay me as the writer, so that you
mm,
understand that that's the way we do this. This is a
mhm,
business. We're going
mhm,
to support the work I do, and I'm going to support the work you do. And I
mm,
established amazing, wonderful relationships with
mm,
this network of Black theaters. And
mm,
I'm sorry sometimes that so many of those theaters have closed, just
mhm,
because it's hard to raise the money and run a
mhm,
theater. And a
mhm,
lot of the charismatic people who were running those theaters just got worn down by the
mm,
effort to do their creative work and also raise that money. But
mm,
it gave me a wonderful, irreplaceable opportunity to speak to the audience I was most interested in, which was
mm,
Black folks, in my own voice as a Black writer in a
mm,
Black institution. So
mhm,
that there was not a problem of, oh my goodness, the producer's white, will she understand this?
mhm,
It was like, no, the producer is also
mhm,
Black, the director is also
mhm,
Black, so that we're all here together trying to figure out the same thing my father was trying to figure out.
mhm,
How do we take these complicated ideas that we
mm,
as artists
mm,
are rolling around in all the
mhm,
time, and
mhm,
offer them to
mhm,
the people whose lives we hope will be impacted in a positive way
mm,
by all this writing that we're doing? And
mm,
it was a wonderful thing. And the fact that it doesn't exist, that network anymore, I think is having a real impact on what kind of work young Black playwrights are able to experiment with, and how they do it, and how they find that audience.
mm,
When I was reading all of that about blackout nights, and, the playwright and the actors wanting, yearning for a
mhm,
moment when they could do these plays. I mean, Slave Play is an example of this.
mhm, mhm,
They wanted to do it in front of Black folks and
mhm,
see what the response was going to be.
mhm,
So they try to
mhm,
structure a night where only Black
mhm,
people can come.
mhm,
And I understand that, but that made me sad, because I
mhm,
never
mhm,
had to confront that. It was like, I'm at the Negro Ensemble Company. I'm at New
mhm,
Federal Theater. I'm at
mhm,
Just Us Theater. I'm at
mhm.
True Colors Theater.
Every
I'm
night is
at
Black
the
Theater Night.
Sojourner Truth
Mm,
Community Theater in Dallas, Texas.
mhm,
So that every night is a blackout night,
mm,
because those things were available to
mm,
me, so that I didn't have to
mm,
wonder, wow, this play is really working in front of white people, because it's making them feel guilty, and they're making them
mm,
angry, and they're crying and
mm,
doing all those things that they may
mm,
do. But would Black people respond the same way to this work?
mm,
And if we never have a chance to see that, then we don't know how to calibrate our work for an audience, because we're only seeing one side of it. So that
mm,
I'm hoping that this is a transition moment, so that
mm,
we won't have to be trying to say, okay, we need a blackout night in order to get an authentic response. I want
mm,
audiences that look like America. I
mhm,
want audiences
mhm,
that are Black people, white people, Asian people, indigenous people,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all telling the same story about
Mm-hmm.
this strange country that we live in, which is such
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
place and such a
Mm-hmm.
hateful place at the
Mm-hmm.
same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be able to figure out a way in the theater, and it'll probably take us another 50, 100 years to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to all be in the theater together and
Mm-hmm.
tell our stories to each other. And the people that are most afraid of that are the same people who don't want you to teach the truth of history. I live in Georgia, and they're
Mm-hmm.
crazy now talking about, no, can't talk about that. That's critical race theory. This is critical race theory. And they actually want to pass a bill that says, can't teach anything about critical race theory. And the people who have to write up the bill said, okay, that's fine, we understand, but what is critical race theory so we can write it in the bill? And they got no definition. What they mean is, don't tell the truth about race in America. Don't tell the truth about the fact that this is a slave state, that we used to buy and sell human beings in this state, in this neighborhood, where I walk my dog 2 blocks from the house every day. There were huge battles there, and you can walk just into the edge of the woods where I walk my dog, and you can see the battlements, the berms that they still dug so that the Confederate soldiers could hide behind them. So that all of that is very present, even in the dirt in Georgia. But they don't want to talk about it, and they have to talk about it. You can't heal it if you can't say it. So it's like, no, you can pick it and say, don't talk about critical race. It's like, we're talking about truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. We don't, the Trail of Tears runs right through our backyard here in Atlanta. And I am ashamed at how little I know about what happened to the folk. So that's been my challenge for myself for this year. I'm trying to find out more about our indigenous neighbors, because if you don't run into people from another culture, you don't naturally understand that culture. You don't naturally understand the cultural traditions or the oppressions or anything unless you're around them. And then when you have a friend who's Cherokee and they say, no, we hate those John Wayne movies, this is why, then you can say, oh, damn, I've been watching those movies for 20 years. Or, you should read Joy Harjo, you should read this, you should read that. But it's a way, I think, that culture can help us do that. And theater maybe more than anything, because in theater, we get to have living human beings standing in front of other living human beings telling a story. Tell me a story. There's few things more powerful than that. Stand in front of me and tell me the stories of your tribe. Tell me about what your mama cooks on your holidays. Tell me a story. And it brings communities together because we realize everybody's mama's cooking something. Everybody's grandmother's telling them something. That's what white people will sometimes say after they've seen my plays. They will come up to me and say, wow, that character was just like my grandmother. And they're amazed at that. And I say, no, all grandmothers are the same. All grandmothers want the best for their grandbabies. All grandmothers are going to say to the girl, keep your dress down. Don't be talking to those wild boys, all of that. And of course, that's a sweeping generalization. Some grandmothers are evil and don't want the best for their grandbabies. But in general, the grandmother wants the best. And it doesn't matter if she's a Black grandmother, a white Southern grandmother, a Greek grandmother, a Ukrainian grandmother. They want safety and health and peace for their family. So it's like once people get past that moment of saying, oh my God, she's a Black character and she's talking just like me. And we as Black people have learned how to do that. We always have done that. When you were in school and they handed you Eugene O'Neill, you figured out how to read it. Tennessee Williams, you figured out how to read it. And then when you finally got to, Raisin in the Sun, it was like, oh my God, these are my people. But I already knew how to read a play. Because I knew how to find the story and put myself in one of those characters. I'm not anything like any of those people in Ibsen, but I could see myself burning that book and had a dollar. I could see myself slamming that door in a doll's house, so that we can, as humans, we're all telling those same 4 or 5 stories. And we can do it if we get the bigotry out, get the racism out, get the misogyny out, get the homophobia out. And then we can just say, oh man, we're all the same, which sounds so simplistic, but it's like the truth of the matter is, that's true. We all are. We're just trying to feed ourselves, live inside, help the people that we love, all of that. And it's like, okay, once we get there and realize that it's only that 1% is hitting us against each other. It's only that 1% that doesn't want us to understand we can fix everything. We have the resources and the will and the strength to fix everything. But you can't do it when 1% of the people control everything. You can't do it. So you have to, you have to do a little bit at a time, do what you can do, then pass off to the next generation and say, okay, y'all, get it. It's time for you.
That's
and
great.
Take the long view. The long view. Don't get mad about next week. Think about 50 years from now. Because it goes by much faster than you think it will.
That's great, Miss Pearl. That's so beautiful. Thank you for that. Do you remember, or what was your first sort of big professional theater production job situation in your career? Do you where was that? When did it happen?
That would be Just Us Theater in Atlanta, and I was married at that time. I sound like I've been married 1,000 times, only twice. But that first one was a politician, and he was the person who was in charge of arts funding for the city of Atlanta. And so the people at Just Us asked me if I would work with them on their fundraising, because I was married to a politician who was giving out money. And I said, wow, I don't really define myself that way as a politician. So I'm a playwright. Can I give you a play? And they gave me the great blessing of saying, absolutely, what's your play? And I gave them the play, and they produced it in something we used to do in Atlanta called the New Play Project, which was just what it sounds like. And it was called Puppet Play. And it was two women and a 7-foot marionette. And the woman was trying to get free of a bad marriage and a bad man and all of that stuff. And they did it. And people were, of course, really kind of shocked that I did something like that, especially since I had a very public marriage. So people, kind of were trying to figure out, was that her? Was that him? And of course, everything is autobiographical. Of course it was. But it was a great experience. The marriage did not survive. But my relationship with Just Us was pivotal to everything that's happened to me subsequently as a writer. I was in residence there for 5 years. I did a new play every year, every single year, which is working really fast, but it trains you to do that, to work fast. But we were working in the Peachtree Playhouse here in Atlanta, and it held 750 people, which was a pretty big theater for an independent Black theater to be working in. And we used to sell it out, which was really wonderful. So that when people would say to me, oh, you're so good, you should go to New York. And I'm saying, I'm working in front of y'all right here. I'm already working in front of a 750 seat house that I can sell out every season with y'all. So why are you trying to send me to New York, where I don't even have a theater at home, where I'll be trying to find a little place that'll read my play? It's like, no, but that's that New York thing, where people in Atlanta feel like, if you're really gonna be good at this, then you got to go to New York. Or if you're really good at it, you should. But Just Us really allowed me to write plays, different kinds of plays, think about what I wanted to do, work with directors, understand how to talk back to directors and not be intimidated by directors, especially men directors, to be able to say, no, that's not what I see. That's not what I want. And you have to learn that. You have to learn all of that.
Absolutely.
And Just Us was really where I learned how to do all of that.
One thing I want to take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate is the fact that you write about women. You care so much about women, and that shows in your work. And so I just want to say thank you for that. Really, it's not even a question, but just thank you for your love of women and Black women and Black folks. I wish that I had pulled this quote out to read it in this moment. But yeah, there's something I read in rehearsals when we were doing blues about your the reason why you write, I think was the name of it, and I thought, that's so beautiful and so clear and deeply profound and necessary, and it just says so much. And so thank you for that. Thank you for those reasons, and thank you for acknowledging, not just writing guy or just talking about Black folks, but women and Black women. And what would you say was the sort of, I don't even want to ask that because I already know, because first of all, I read that little excerpt that I'm talking about. But thank you.
I think that kind of one of the things that you're touching on is something that's really always been important to me, which is I grew up in a family of really, really interesting people, men and women. I mean, I used to sit at my grandmother's dinner table and say, wow, I can't wait to get old enough to offer a question, not even an opinion, but just to be in the flow of all these brilliant people talking about things. And, you know, brothers and sisters in my father's generation. My father was the oldest of 7, and there were 4 boys, and then the 3 girls came, they were the younger ones. And just watching them, my aunts, navigate the relationships with their brothers, because my grandmother was very traditional. If we're all sitting around at the table and my father or one of my uncles would want something, my grandmother would turn to one of my aunts and say, go get that for your brother. They're all grown by now. I mean, it's not like
they're like 3 years old.
Brother. And
exactly.
You know, several of my aunts would do it. One of my aunts was like, he is grown, he can go get it for himself. But watching these women in this very interesting family who still had to deal with the whole idea that men and male voices are the ones that matter. You know, it was kind of like in an August Wilson play where there's interesting women, but it's hard to talk over Troy Maxon.
That's
you know,
right.
It's hard
Come on now, Miss Pearl. Yeah.
So it's that. So that I always want to write about women like me, write about women like my aunts, write about women like my friends. And often I will see really interesting women, playwrights that I know, and they never write about women like themselves. They write about women who are having hard times or in really trouble, which is fine. There's a reason that people write whatever they write. But I'm always hoping to make a space for all kinds of women who are not beaten down by the world, who are standing up, who are able to survive, and who are always trying to strategize to figure out what they can do, and who are whole, who are not torn apart by everything, but are whole, and who are in the midst of struggling to be free because of external forces, are also prepared to struggle to be free in the continuing conversations that we always have with our brothers, with Black men. You know, because it's 2 different struggles.
Yes.
I'm definitely of the generation that, you know, that was bringing feminism forward to many Black men who were considered themselves to be very progressive, very on top of things when it came to matters racial. But when you tried to talk to them about matters of gender, they were Neanderthals. They were terrible. They wanted, you know, they didn't all want you to walk 3 steps behind, but some of them did. And we remember during, you know, cultural nationalist movements that there was there were conversations about that. You know, the brother should be the one who speaks in the house, and the brother this and the brother that. And I'm like, no, I'm not going for that. We are going to have to figure out how to talk to each other and do this together. And I want that to come through in the plays, so that even though this may not be, okay, this is a play about feminism. You know, nobody wants to go see a play about feminism, but you want to hear, if you're a woman like me going to the theater, you want to hear some shit talking women.
That's right. That's right.
You do not want them to just say, okay, baby, I love you, so I'm not going to talk back. It's like we want to say, no, I love you. And that's why I'm about to
get you together.
Because
love that.
I can't love you if I can't tell you the truth. I can't love you if I'm not whole. If I'm not prepared to stand up and say, I love you, but I can't love you more than I love me as a woman. And if you can't love me like that, then we don't need to be together. It's been real. Bye. People are reluctant to create women characters like that, because many of us are still afraid to bring our feminism and our love of our Black community together. And I'm not. I feel like there is a way to talk to everybody about what it means to have free women in your midst, where they have to get over being scared. And my husband and I talked about this endlessly, because when I was becoming a feminist, I had grown up with a Black nationalist orientation. But then I became a feminist because I understood that was another kind of oppression I was going to have to deal with. And this was between, after I had gotten divorced. And I actually had like a book list that I would say, you know, to the brothers who wanted to date me, you know, if you really want to go out with me and we are going to be close together, you need to read these books. And they would be trying to fake it and act like they had read the book, and they hadn't read the book. And my husband, who is my husband now, is Aaron Burnett, who's also a writer. He's the one who anything I would give him, he would read it and read it in the spirit I was offering it. Not to say, oh, I got to do the assignment and read it because otherwise it's going to be in a bad mood and it's going to be a horrible weekend. But to say, let me see
in the
what
spirit that you were offering.
She's trying to tell me. And he also said something that I thought was such a male thing to say, which was, I realized that you knew a lot about something that I didn't know anything about. He was talking about feminism. And he said, and I can't have that where I don't know anything about it. And you know so much, so I needed to catch up. I said, that's right.
Such a male thing.
But isn't it? Like, I'm supposed to already know everything that's worthwhile. It's like, but you don't.
But you don't.
So let's figure out a way to help you know that and understand that when you embrace it, when you understand what it means to be a free man who can accept and understand and be on a journey with free women, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yes.
It is. It's
Pearl.
all that. It's like when I have to get my family.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's all that.
I'm like waving in the air. I love it.
You want. Freedom.
Oh, that's so great.
Freedom makes people different. Freedom makes people better. Enslavement and oppression makes people turn on each other and beat each other and shoot each other and all the horrible things that we see ourselves doing. That's because we're not free. If we could get free, we would not behave that way.
We would not behave that way.
So many of us are carrying around a big old ball of rage.
Yes.
All the time.
Yeah.
And we don't even know who we're mad at. We're just mad. And it comes out in violent ways. I
don't mean to laugh, but you're so right.
It does.
We don't even know who we mad at. We just mad.
And don't bump me on the subway. Don't cut in front of me on the thing. And it's like, you don't even know me. Why are you like now chasing me with the gun because we had an exchange at a grocery store?
Because you ain't free. You ain't free.
Right.
You ain't free.
Right. And you know you're not in charge of your life. And you have that moment when you're violent like that, random violence that we see so much in our country, in our community now. There's that moment where that person who's going to be violent says, I may not be able to control everything, but I'm going to control this moment.
Come on now.
I can't control who is keeping me down, but I can make sure you don't step in front of me.
Right.
I can make sure you don't disrespect me.
Right.
And how they define disrespect, changes from day to day.
Yeah.
But there's so much violence, so much shooting of people in Atlanta now that it's just a sad thing because most of those shootings are being done by angry young Black men who don't see a future. They do not like their lives the way they are now, and they don't see a future. So they're like, okay, well, in the time I'm here, I'm gonna get as high as I can. I'm gonna have as many women do what I say as I can, and I'm gonna kill anybody that gets in my way because I can get it done easier than I can get a book. So that's why culture is so important because we have to say no. There's a better way to do that.
There's a better way.
Better way to do it. Yeah.
That's great, Miss Pearl. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to celebrate perhaps one of the greatest women I've ever come in contact with, and that is your character, Angel, in Blues for an Alabama Sky. Let me tell you something. I mean, Angel is, and I will also say that when I directed the show a couple years ago, I too was sort of mixed up in that I was thinking a lot about it being Angel's play, right? Like I said, it really hasn't been until these last couple of years in the sort of aftermath of working on Blues that I'm like, oh, I see now, right? And I see why I'm so drawn to this play, right? So it's been a whole lot of aha moments after the fact. But I definitely had Angel at the fore of my mind in that production I did. And I want to just ask you, or I don't even know, thank you for Angel, first of all. And just like, is there anything that you want to like say about her? I mean, she's a badass, in my opinion. I think she's a badass, and she is so inspirational to me as a man. And I do feel like if you had seen my production in New York, it definitely had Angel at the top of mind. Do you know what I mean? Whatever that means, and I wonder I just wonder how you feel about Angel.
I love Angel. She's so complicated. And she actually is the first character that I wrote, first Black female character, who was not altogether admirable. Angel would lie at the drop of a
Yes, she
hat. I mean,
will. Yes, she will.
about little things like, oh, I'm only gonna wear this dress once and I'm gonna give it back to you. And then every time we see her after that, she got this dress on. I'm really gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. But she was the reason that I love her is because she was always trying to survive.
Yes, she was.
Always trying to survive.
Yeah.
When she left Miss Lily's, I love that guy talks about, he realized she was going and he met her at the train station.
Because she would have left without me.
She was glad to see me, but she would have left without me.
Ooh.
Because she didn't. And that, I wrote that line, but I still love that line.
Yes. Yeah.
That says everything about how well he knew her and loved her anyway.
Right.
And about how much she loved him, would have left anyway.
Right.
She's really not able to love anybody.
Right.
Because she's too scared.
She's too
And
scared.
what is she scared of? She's scared of being a broke old woman picking up
125th Street.
She's scared of being vulnerable. She's scared of nobody taking care of her. So she tries to find somebody.
That's right.
Is it an Italian gangster? No, that's not it. Is it Doc? No, that's not it. Is it Leland? And of course it's not Leland, but she's getting desperate.
She's gonna try to make it work.
Older.
Right.
And she's been able to make her way through the world being a beautiful woman. And when that's been your way to make your way in the world, and you start getting older and you see lines in your face, and you see your body changing, and you realize that the currency you've had to do business with men based on your beauty is not going to be the currency you have anymore. And that's where Angel is. And she's terrified. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And the friend who is the best friend she has, who is Guy, when he says to her, you wouldn't be talking like this if I was a straight man offering to take you to Paris. And she says, but you're not that, are you?
But you're not that, are you?
It's like one of the meanest lines ever. But he takes it because he knows her. Yeah. And she says it because she's angry at him for not being able to save her. Not being able to save her. She doesn't think he's going to Paris. So she's like, if she just could have believed him, right, she would have fooled around with Leland, but much more carefully than she did. And cut him loose and got on that boat and gone on to France. But absolutely, that fear made her make terrible decisions. And for me, writing a character like that, fear is always the challenge for me. What am I afraid of? What am I afraid of as a human? So that for Angel, who makes such horrible decisions when she's afraid, it was like a lesson I was giving myself about not let fear be how you make your decisions. They'll always be wrong.
Yeah, always will be
based on fear. And you know what I'm talking about when you're scared to do what you want to do, and you're scared you won't do it. And that's Angel's lesson. Which is why she doesn't get to go to Paris at the end, why she's still sitting in that window, going back to what she knows, looking for a man to take care of her.
Up and down the street.
And that's a feminist fable as well, because that's like saying, look what happens, my sisters. Look what happens, women that I love. Then we say, we're going to depend on men to take care of us.
Come on now.
Look what happens. Look what happens. Because Delia was taking care of herself. She was a free woman. She was. Yes, she was. Of course, devastated when Doc died, but she was going to continue on.
Yes, she was.
With her work, she was going to go to Paris. I don't think she'll move to Paris. People ask me that. Do you think she moved to Paris?
I think Delia comes home.
Her and Guy to set up
yeah.
It's gonna be so wild when he gets there. Yeah. Setting up no house with Delia.
She's gonna stay about a month and then she's gonna come home.
And then she's gonna come home with some fabulous hats, a dress, and shoes to die for. But she's gonna come right back. And
she's coming home and do her work.
Because that's what her work is. Yeah. So that the ability, I think, in that play to balance Angel's desperate longing for safety and not understanding that only comes from yourself. I think that was something that I was working with in my own life, so that it was a big part of what fueled that play, to look at what the circumstances are. What will happen if you make these choices? And I realize as a writer, I'm always trying to answer questions that are driving me crazy. And what I realized many years ago is, if it's driving me crazy, it's probably driving somebody else crazy too. It's so true. It's so true. Figure it out.
Ms. Pearl, I'm going to say this very explicitly. Thank you on behalf of so many people. I think I can speak for when I say thank you for writing Angel, this iconic character that, in my opinion, as a theater director, and as an actor, you just don't find roles like Angel.
Oh, thank you.
You know, that are complicated, complex,
Yep.
full, big, right? And not pretty. You know,
Because we got
and
all of
yeah,
it. We're
we got
all of those things.
we're
All
all
of
of
those.
those complexities. And I just think about when I was casting for my blues and the amount of women who would say, "Oh my God, I just I just want to like come in and say these words because this character is just so everything," right? And so I think I speak for a lot of those women and a lot of people in the theater when I say thank you for this play, but thank you for Angel. You know, and you can't talk about Guy if you don't talk about Angel. You can't talk about blues without talking about Angel.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
you know,
there.
they are there.
I remember the very first time we did blues here in Atlanta, and Felicia Rashad was playing Angel. And they had their first entrance, and we were doing it in a small theater at the Woodruff Arts Center. It holds about 200 people, so the audience was right there. And when she makes her first entrance with Guy, the audience was, I mean, right there close to her. And when she staggered, when she came in, the people in the front row leaned out to catch her. And I said to myself, sitting in the back, as I always do, you got him. Because if they think that Felicia Rashad ever fell on the stage when she didn't mean to, they are totally believing she's Angel. So they wanted to catch her so she wouldn't fall coming home at the end of the night. And I think that's the thing about Angel is even when she's drunk and rowdy, even when she's lying and you know she's lying, she's so charismatic and she's so full of yearning, you know, longing to be free. She wants to be happy. She wants to be free. But she just can't figure it out. And I think a lot of us relate to that. And I know that a lot of the people who have played that role have really been able to find some things, some answers to some questions about themselves because of her complexity, because she is all the sweetness and all the bad things.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can be both, you know, when
yes,
she's
we can.
Her Sunday morning blues for Doc when she's singing, you know, and all that. How sweet is she, you know, singing St. Louis Woman, St. Louis Blues and all that. You know, I love that scene about, you know, where Doc says, wait till I tell you what my mother said about marriage, all of that, because she wants to be happy, Angel does. But she can't. That fear is that fear. Because nobody else in that play is afraid. Guy isn't afraid. Delia isn't afraid. Doc isn't afraid.
Right.
Even Crazy Leland, he's not afraid. You know, he's not afraid. It's Angel's fear that brings the poison in. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for indulging me with about Angel and just and all of that. Just I'm so grateful for that character. So many lessons, and I wanted to say a couple of my favorite lines just to throw out since I'm talking to the playwright. You mentioned there was something you said a couple minutes ago, but anyway, there's a line about it is tawdry and so are we all, right? And like the connection to the fact that like we all are complex and we all got some ugly and we all got some pretty, we all got some sweet and some sour,
tawdry and running for our natural lives.
That's my favorite. One of my favorite lines.
Because aren't we?
Oh, because we are. And another line that I think of, one of my favorite Angel lines is when she says, I'm sorry in about 20 different ways and I don't give a damn about any of them.
Yep.
I mean, if you unpack that, that's deep. Yes. You know what I mean? Like that's deep, you know. And I just and that line makes me love her and have so much compassion for her. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, right? Like something about it I really connect with and I understand. And it's one of my favorite lines. It's poetic, obviously, but it's also just like deep. You know? And and then just Guy's ability, you kind of touched on this a couple minutes ago, Guy's ability to know her and really see her and love her in spite of is a blessing. That is a real gift. And to me, it almost in many ways is the true definition of friendship and true definition of love. I see you and I know she would have left me and still I'm gonna leave her 3 months of rent. Right. And I'm still gonna make sure, you know, even after the whole thing that happens with Sam, he still looks out
Yeah.
That's love, y'all.
And
That's
he's
love.
and he's and he's when he's talking to her, he says, sometimes Miss Angel, you just wear me out. But
Yes.
because her demand is so great. But he
Hmm.
loves her in spite
Hmm.
of all
In
that.
spite of
Even
all
at
of
those
that.
moments when she just wears him out,
Yeah.
she still is someone that he would not want to be on the street. He'll pay the rent
He'll
and
pay
hope
the
that in
rent.
3 months she can figure
She can
something
figure
out.
something out. What are some of your favorite things? Like, what's your favorite food, your favorite city, your favorite anything? It can be anything, just in the spirit of
Oh, okay.
lightheartedness.
Um, Atlanta is definitely my favorite
Mm,
city. It's home
mm,
after all this time.
mm,
My favorite food, I really like Mexican food, but I love
mm.
fettuccine Alfredo. I
Oh,
think I could
yes.
eat Italian food for the rest of my life, but I would be a big girl and I would be big. But I do like, I like, and that I do like Mexican food and Italian food. I'd be good to
Mm,
go. I
awesome.
love New York. I've never lived in New York, but
Mm,
I
mm,
always feel like, those cinematic moments when you get to New York and say, "Oh my God, I got a play
totally.
here. This is like New York,"
Yeah.
because New York does have that thing.
Hmm.
But I tell you, one of the things that was really wonderful for me was driving across the country. So that I
Mm,
love Atlanta as the
hmm.
city where I live and all of that, but I learned to love the country by
Mm,
driving across
I
and
love that.
just looking at the country because I had never driven across the country. I was
Hmm.
like between Chicago and LA, all that in the middle. I was not
Hmm.
about that at all.
Right.
I was not thinking about driving across Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But driving across the country, you see how beautiful the land is, and
Mm,
also you meet people out of an
mm,
urban setting. And
mm.
my husband and I have driven back and forth across the country maybe 5 times, and
Wow.
we have never met a person on the road who was not a good person, a good human.
Mm,
Talking in restaurants, at the motels we
yeah.
stayed, just at the welcome centers. It's just been really something that I love, is being able to look at the country, because I never really felt attached to this country until Barack
Mm,
Obama.
mm,
And then I felt like,
mm.
oh, wow, okay, this is my country too. And I
Yeah.
remember when we were driving
Mm,
across right after he got elected, and we'd be in these little tiny towns, and I would think to myself, he's the president out here too.
mm. Oh,
She's the
wow.
first
I
lady
love
out
that.
here too. And
Yes.
it really made me feel attached to the country in a way that I never have.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So, Miss Pearl, the way I like to wrap these interviews up is with three sort of final questions. The
Okay.
first one is, what does it mean to you to be celebrated?
It means I need to keep working hard to be
Mm,
deserving of all of that.
mm,
I
mm,
count it as a real blessing that
mm,
people love my work and accept my work, and it makes me
mm,
want to work harder to
mm.
get to the heart of the matter.
What or who do you celebrate?
I celebrate Black women writers, the ones who made a place for me, who let me understand that there was a place for me as a writer.
Mm, mm,
Alice Walker, Maya Angelou, all of the wonderful writers, Intisaki Shange,
mm,
Lorraine Hansberry, all of the
mm,
writers who made a
mm,
space for me. And that's
mm,
what I try to do for younger writers, make that
mm,
space.
mm. And last but not least, what do you do to celebrate you?
Oh, I drink champagne on my front porch. I sit on the glider with my husband and drink champagne and wave at my neighbors. That's what I do
Yes.
every day. I don't try to wait for big occasions. I try to celebrate every single day. So I drink a glass of champagne and wave at my neighbors.
That's amazing, Miss Pearl. It has been an honor to sit down with you today and to celebrate you. I thank you. I love you. We love you. This has just been a blessing. It's been so beautiful to hear your story. And is there anything else
Thank
on your
you.
heart
Thank
or
you.
mind?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're so
And I
welcome.
love you back. Thank you for this. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, darling. Keep doing the work you do.
Thank you, Miss Pearl. I love you, and I'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.